Hi, welcome. This is my current favourite lingerie set. It's made with the Precious Metals kit, which has sold out, but the gorgeous tulle is still available. I'll pop a link in the description box. It was an incredibly fun make, so come and sew along with me. This is my initial quick sketch. I'm inspired by the strappy details in the kit. I'm now going to refine my sketch. I find it helps when I'm making pattern modifications or to figure out the order of construction to have a really detailed plan sketched up. I'm going to use Procreate to sketch this up. It's easy to use and I can undo any mistakes. Here is how my sketch turned out. The pattern I'll be using for the bra is the Black Beauty by embroidered. The two-piece cup will work well as a base and make the most of the beautiful embroidered tulle. Modifications I'll make to the Black Beauty are to turn the band into a long line. I'll also reduce the width of the power bar just so it looks more like a sling. Next I'll add an extender so I can attach my strappy details that go along the top of the cup towards the centre. There will be a centre strap that will house the little heart slider, and these three straps will be attached together with a 19mm ring. I'll use the wide 19mm copper strap that is in the kit, but then I'll split that into the narrow peach strap so I can bring that detail into the back of the bra as well. I'll make the lower cup and the sling out of the plain black section of the tulle, and then the embroidered part will make up the band and the top cup, finishing the edges off with the fold over elastic. For the bottoms, I want them to be high waist but also a high leg cut, so I thought the Maxine by Evie Louve works well for that vision. I have adjusted the legs to be a little bit higher than in the pattern. I knew I wanted to mimic the strappy detailing of the bra, so I've added this through the front of the briefs, meaning I needed to add a front seam. I also changed the crotch to this triangular detail. The crotch itself will be made from a stretch satin. The centre front will be a stretch mesh, as will the back of the briefs. The side panels will be the embroidered tulle. Again, there will be a heart slider in the middle. That outlines my plan. Now let's get creating. Based on my sketch, I've written out a list of alterations I need to make to the pattern. To make it long line, I need to extend the band. The pieces involved in this are the back band, the outer cradle, and the bridge. And then there is the power bar alteration where I need to reduce the width to create a narrow sling and the little strap attachment for the strappy detail. The band is already slightly extended due to the difference in my construction method. The pattern would have had 19mm wide elastic turned up, whereas I'm using fold over elastic, so I'm already gaining 19mm. So I don't need to add too much more, maybe just a centimetre, which I will mark the whole way along the bottom of the band on this back band piece. I plan on using a 4x3 hook and eye, so I need to make sure this fits my band. The base of the hook and eye will line up with the folded edge of the fold over elastic, and I need to mark where the top will finish. So I line that mark up and blend it into the side seam, creating a new top line to cut to. Here are the 3 pieces that have all had the bottom band extension. So I've got the bridge, the outer cradle, and the back band. What I am going to do as well is attach the outer cradle and bridge together so I can cut it out as a continuous piece rather than have the seam in there breaking up the embroidery. I'll now make the change to the power bar to reduce its width and add the extension for the strappy attachments. Firstly, I'll mark where it aligns with the top of the top cup to give me an idea on placement. This underarm edge and the outer edge will be finished with fold over elastic. I want to make sure that these will butt together when they meet so that they feed through the ring for the strap attachment nicely. My fold over elastic is 1 centimetre wide once folded, so I'll check that there is 2 centimetres of space at the top for that. Checking my sketch, I see the strap extension is higher than the top of the top cup. It's about halfway between that and the start of the main strap. I've marked on my power bar pattern piece where the top cup edge finishes, so I know my extension needs to be in the middle of here. Apologies, my video cut out on me sketching this up, but I extended out a line at that halfway point for my strap attachment. It will go into a 12mm ring, so I need it to be slightly smaller than that, and that works well with the finished width of my fold over elastic being 1 centimetre. I've drawn out a line based on my sketch of how I want to narrow this piece in width. I know I still want it to stop in the same place at the bottom, and it needs to blend up to the strappy attachment. The outer edge is finished with fold over elastic, so I've just sketched that in too. It'll overlap at the strappy attachment point and meet at the top here where the strap is. I have narrowed this top part down slightly just so my curve wasn't too tight. I've cut out the adjusted power bar piece and I'm just checking it against the mannequin to see that it's looking like it should. I'll pop it in place and match up the wire line. I'm happy with this, it's curving where I imagined it would be and the strap attachment looks correct. I'll just check that this strap attachment will fit the 12mm ring, and I think this will work really well. Time to cut out all my bra pieces. I always use a rotary cutter, mat and pattern weights. I find it much more accurate with the fine fabric than using scissors. I also lay my pieces out in a flat lay as I cut to confirm that I've cut all the pieces correctly. Here are all the pieces cut out for my Black Beauty bra. I have a combined bridge and cradle piece cut from the main fabric and also a sheer cup lining. There is the power net back band. I've got the lower cups cut from the main fabric and the sheer cup lining. The top cup I just cut out from the main fabric only as I wanted it to remain as see-through as possible. And then there is the sling / strap extension, which I cut from the plain black part of the main fabric. My first task is to add the fold over elastic onto my sling pieces. I'll apply it to the inner part here first and then to the small scooped edge here. I decided to sew it in one pass using a lightning stitch set 3 long and 1.5 wide. To apply, I stretch the elastic a fraction, butt up the fold of the elastic to the cut edge of the fabric, so stretch, butt, fold the elastic over and sew. And then repeat, stretch, butt, fold, sew. I'm showing my fold over elastic application on the briefs here, but I use the same technique for the bra as well. Here are my 2 power bar pieces with the fold over elastic edge. They'll curve around the breast like that, and the 2 strap attachments at the top. Moving on to the band piece, I cut the cradle as 1, removing this seam here. So the next seam to look at is the one that attaches to the back band. I'm going to flip the lining out of the way. My aim is to get an enclosed side seam. I flip the power net back band over, right sides together with the front cradle piece, and then pop the lining back on top of that, right sides together with the main cradle piece. Pin and sew this seam here, repeat on the other side. With the 2 side seams sewn, you can flip it and you have a lined cradle with enclosed side seams, which I will then top stitch. Now on to the cups, attaching the top and bottom pieces together. I want to also enclose this cross seam. To do this, I'll flip the lining piece out of the way for now. I mark my notches with pins as I go, so I'll line the pattern piece back on top of my fabric piece and pop a pin in at the notch mark. Repeat for the top cup and the lining bottom cup. Create a sandwich by placing the top cup right sides together with the bottom cup, and then lay the lining bottom cup right side down on top of this. Match up the notches. Pin all 3 layers together at the notch mark. Match up and pin all 3 layers at the beginning and end points of the seam. On fine fabrics, I tend to double pin, i.e. have the pin weave in and out of the fabric twice. This holds it more securely in place. I'm now going to pop more pins in between the ones I've already placed in here, sew the seam, and then repeat for the other cup. It's taking shape. We've got the frame with the back band attached and top stitched down, the bottom cup and cup lining attached to the top cup. My seams are neatly enclosed. You can see the raw edge in here. I cut the bottom cup, not fully black in the end because I wanted it to look like the embroidery was dripping down onto the bottom cup. Now it is time to baste our power bars in place. I've got my 2 power bar pieces pinned onto the cups, and when I'm doing anything symmetrical like this, I like to measure them against each other to make sure I have them perfectly even. So I'll flip them over together, lining up the seams, moving around, and then we can check whether those power bar ends are lined up. This is looking pretty good. I've base stitched the power bar onto the cups, and it's now time to put the cups into the band. I've got two layers, one main and one lining. I'm not a huge fan of basting together these two layers at the cup seam. I tend to use a temporary adhesive sprayed between the layers instead, so that they act as one layer, which is much more easier when inserting the cups. Again, I'll use pins to mark my notches by lining up the pattern piece with the fabric and placing pins at the notch marks, starting with the left side. Well, it's the left side when we were looking at it, but it's actually the right side once worn. I like to lay out my pieces to ensure that I am putting the correct cup into the correct side. Flip the cup over onto the cradle and line up the cup seams to the notches. I'm now adding extra pins in between my notch pins. I like to use a lot of pins when putting my cups into the frame. I know there is a school of thought that means you don't use any pins, but I've never been able to get it to line up as perfectly as I do when I use a lot of pins. I've got the cup sewn into the frame now, but before I do the stitching and while it's still pinned, I fold the bra in half just to check that the details are lining up on both sides. So I check that the cup seam's even, and then the power bars end in the same place, and then the other side of the cut seam. So that way I know that all parts of the bra are symmetrical. It's now time to pop on the underwire channeling. This I don't pin, I just line the channeling up a few centimetres at a time with the cup seam. Sew, line up, sew and carry on around the whole cup seam. I have attached the first pass of the underwire channeling to the inside of the seam allowance of the cup and the frame. So now I need to flip it down so it lies against the frame and do 2 rows of top stitching to secure it down. The channeling is secured in place with a row of top stitching along each edge. My next step is adding fold over elastic to the top of the cup, but before I do that, I'll check my sketch just to make sure that I'm not skipping ahead of any of the modifications I made to the pattern. The centre strappy part is separate to that, so I can go ahead and add the fold over elastic. This is looking lovely. I've now got fold over elastic finishing off the neckline. My next step is going to be the bottom band, but I need to add in my centre strap detail first. There is a length of skinny strap elastic through the middle, which attaches to a 19mm ring. So I'll just allow a length of this and the bottom will be enclosed in the band fold over elastic. I need to find the centre position of the bottom of the band, so I'll fold it in half, line up the side seams, line up the band and mark the centre with a pin, and this is where I will baste on my centre strap. I've applied the bottom band fold over elastic and the centre strap, so now I need to work on finishing off the underarm piece. Before I do that, I check the width of the back band to make sure it fits my hook and eye. It looks good, so I will carry on adding the fold over elastic along the underarm. To prepare for this, I pin my power bar to the underarm, as this also gets sandwiched into the fold over elastic, and I also want to check that my 2 sides are going to be symmetrical. So I'll line up where the top cup finishes and check that the strap extensions are the same length. And because I'm closing off the outside of my channeling, I need to pop my underwires in. I'm sewing fold over elastic along the top edge. When I come up to the underwire part, I make sure I've got my wire pushed right out of the way. The end is here, which is a good distance away from my sewing needle, making sure I'm not going to break anything. Here is the underarm fold over elastic. My next step is to attach the large 19mm ring to the top of the power bar for the main strap attachment and a smaller 12mm ring onto the extension for the strappy detail. I'll also put the hook and eye on so that I can try it on the mannequin and get my strap lengths correct. This is how I set up for sewing the hook and eye. I like to wriggle and push the two corners well into the hook and eye pocket and hold these in place with a sewing clip. Then I smooth out the middle section and secure with a pin. Check to see the back of the hook and eye is caught in place. I use a very narrow zigzag stitch of 2mm wide and 0.8 long on the very outer edge of the hook and eye, so it kind of binds the edge of it. This is the main strap elastic, which will be seen from the front of the bra, and I'll make this part adjustable. So I've threaded these sliders over the end, and then I use these sewing clips. These are super handy tools. I use them all the time in bra making. I place the clip over the center bar in the slider, and it really helps the elastic stay lined up so you don't have the back bit poking out to the side once sewn. So I'll pop over to the machine and sew this with a straight stitch. I place my needle to the hard right and I start sewing in the middle of the elastic down rather than at the top. I just find that it starts easier. I sew down, reverse and repeat that a couple of times. The sewing clip stays in place so you can use it to guide the elastic. Each strap now has a slider attached to the end, so I'm going to pop them on the bra by feeding the cut end through the 19mm ring and then back through the slider. The cut end will attach to the strappy details at the back of the bra. I've only guessed the length of the strap, so I'll try it on the mannequin first to see how much I need to remove. Repeat for the other side. I also decided to add sliders to my center strappy pieces so I can make those adjustable as well. Whenever I make straps, once I've put the slider on, then I always line them up and check that they are the same length. So I'll snip the extra bit off this one before I thread them through the bra. I'll attach the centre strappy details by feeding them through the 12mm rings on the extension. Again, I just estimated this length. I'll try it on the mannequin to confirm. It is looking so good. I am going to pop it up on the mannequin now to check the length of my main straps. I'll bring my strap over. That looks like a pretty good length. I need to add a 19mm ring and then the narrow straps will be in a V formation like this. So I'll pin that in place, check the length and sew it on. The elastic will be on the inside of the band. I've got one side of the strap extension sewn on. A tip, it really pays to match your thread colour to whatever you are stitching. It just looks a lot more polished, even though it's a bit of a pain when it comes to these detailed bits that you are sewing one after the other. Like here, I changed from copper colour for the main strap through to a peach thread for the skinny straps and then to a black to attach those to the band. Now I'll lay the other band on top of the one I've already sewn so I can get an exact match for where the straps need to go so that they end up identical. The bra is back on the mannequin. I haven't trimmed the strap tails off yet as I wanted to pop it back on just to double check the placement. It looks pretty good to me. I'll trim those tails, keep the bra on the mannequin and sort out the front straps. And here are the front straps. I'm just figuring out where I want to put that large central ring and I'll clip it in place to test the side straps. I'm playing around with it until I'm happy with the final placement and then I'll do a little straight stitch to secure it in place. The front straps are sewn up. Again, I haven't cut the excess straps off until I checked that I was happy with the placement and fit. And I love it. I'll trim those tails and have a final look. It is all looking amazing. I am completely in love with this. It looks really polished and something quite special. Thanks for joining me. I hope you were inspired to sew your own strappy black beauty. Of course, it needs to be a set, so join me for part 2 where we sew these Tonikas.